No, I have some secret weapons. The first one is I have an amazing spouse. She's very supportive of me, and she tolerates me being in a room by myself making stuff up for long periods of time. We've made some decisions in our marriage and just in our lives to kind of help me do that, and that has been very, very helpful. Another thing that's been helpful is we talked a little bit about this before we started recording, but I like to write on my phone. So, my lifestyle is pretty busy. I'm always on the go. I've got an 8-year-old daughter, so I'm the dad taxi service at this point. So, the time that I'm actually in front of my computer is actually very, very minimal every day. So and I have a pretty busy job. So I actually discovered that if I'm going to continue writing at the pace that I want to write, I have to learn how to change something. So for the longest time, I used Scrivener iOS on the Mac, and then I have the iPhone version. And so I sync. So basically, I'll wake up at like 5:30 in the morning, and I'll start writing. And then when it's time for me to go to work, I'll sync my manuscript to my phone. So then when I'm on a break at work, or I'm at lunch, or I'm out running errands or something, and I'm standing in line at the grocery store waiting to check out, I can pull out my phone and pick up where I left off on my novel.
Welcome to the Stark Reflections on Writing and Publishing podcast. There has never been a better time for writers. More information, options, and opportunities are available to you, but navigating these requires insight. Join Mark Leslie Lefebvre as he draws upon more than a quarter century of experience as a writer, a bookseller, and a trusted book industry consultant to explore and reflect on the writing and publishing landscape to help you make informed choices on your writer journey.
Hello, Reflectives, and welcome to episode 279 of the Stark Reflections podcast. This is your host, Mark Leslie Lefebvre. In today's episode, I have an interview with Michael La Ronn, the author of over 80 science fiction and fantasy books and self-help books for writers. We talk about those books. We talk about how he writes so much while working a full-time job, raising a family, and taking night school classes for his law degree, and so much more. And that's coming up later in this episode. First, let's hear a word about this episode's sponsor. This episode is sponsored by Findaway Voices. Now, Findaway Voices is a platform that allows you to get your audiobooks out into a global market, more than 43 retail and library platforms, including Spotify. Yes, Spotify owns Findaway and Findaway Voices. Findaway is the mother company for Findaway Voices, which is the indie author-friendly solution for audiobooks. But speaking of Spotify, this is from the Findaway Voices blog, recent blog post, talking about Spotify promo cards. Now, audiobooks through Findaway can be distributed to Spotify, and it's US only as of the recording of this in December 2022. But Spotify is a giant platform with millions and millions of users, and they have a way to make automated promo cards for audiobooks. Basically, you go to the website, and I'll have a link to this in the show notes over at starkreflections.ca, but you go to the website, which is promocards.byspotify.com/audiobooks, and you put in the name of an audiobook or author name, and you'll see search results on the right-hand side. You pick one of them. You choose your background color, use the size tab so you can do horizontal, vertical, square sizes for different social media, and then share the file, or there's a couple quick and easy buttons where you can share it to Twitter and Facebook. And of course, you can copy and use the direct URL link to send your fans to go check out your book on Spotify. This is one of the great things that Findaway Voices offers for authors. They have so many different tools and options available. If you're looking for a narrator, a professional narrator, they'll set you up. If you have your audiobook ready to go, you can load it to Findaway, and you can choose which of the platforms you want to go to, or you can go all in like I do for most of my books and distribute them everywhere the Findaway Voices goes. And if you want to check out how you can leverage Findaway Voices as an author check them out over at starkreflections.ca/Findaway. Well, dear listener, if you can't tell from the sound of my voice, I am still under the weather. I had tested positive for COVID a few days after I got back from 20 Books Vegas, and for 9 days after, or 9 days in a row, I continued to test positive for COVID. Fortunately, thanks to the vaccine, it only feels like a really, really bad head cold, and I've been able to get most of my work done, but I've got this stuffiness and congestion in my head that I just cannot get rid of, and that was one of the reasons why I was trying so desperately to avoid COVID, because whenever I get a cold, it just stays, and I can't get rid of it. I've had pneumonia in both lungs, I've had bronchitis numerous times, and so try to avoid those head cold things. So even though as of this morning, and I'm recording this on Thursday, December 1st, 2022, I finally tested negative for COVID. Obviously, I still have head cold symptoms, etc. I don't even know if that's separate from the COVID, because there is a really bad flu going around, or not. Who knows? All I'm going to say is this is going to be the gist of my personal update, because I'm not going to read comments from recent episodes or get into too much of a personal update, because I cannot stand the sound of my voice right now. So fortunately on TikTok lately, I've just been using the little annotation for my dad jokes. I just thought that was funny. I was having some issues with the sound quality on my phone, and so I migrated to that, and it worked out really, really well when you have a voice like this. Anyways, I will get to comments and all the other things, but just want to say I'm continuing to work on Hex and the City with Julie Strauss. We're having a lot of fun with that. I'm also editing the audio, mixing together Sarah Sampino and Scott Overton, and just love the two of them in the duet version of the audiobook for Lover's Moon. And I am blown away, absolutely blown away by the sales of the print book of The Canadian Mounted, which is my tribute guide to planes, trains, and automobiles. I mean, I've sold well over 1,000 print copies of this book, and I'm pretty excited. I mean, I have sold more than thousands of copies of some of my other books, but usually not so quickly. To be quite honest, it usually takes a little bit longer than, just in the first 4 weeks of a book's release. And most of those sales obviously have taken place right around starting the day before American Thanksgiving. And anyways, it's been a fun ride, loving the feedback I've been getting, and even seeing so many pictures from people who have the book and shared it sitting on an airplane on the sort of the tray that you normally have your dinner on an airplane. People sharing pictures of it at airports as well. Love seeing that. That is just that tickles me to no end, and almost makes me forget that I have this stupid head cold that I'm trying to get rid of. Anyways, that's it for my rambling personal update. Why don't we get right into this interview with Michael La Ronn. Hey, Michael, welcome to the Stark Reflections podcast.
Hi, Mark. Great to be here.
It's been a long time since I've seen you in person. I think the last time I might have seen you in person was 20 Books Vegas back at Samstown. 2018?
It was 2018.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, it was 2018. So it's been 4 years now.
Yeah, I mean, there were a couple of years, where travel's not a thing. But have you been traveling?
I have. This is my first year back at writing conferences. So I was at InkersCon earlier this year. I went to where else did I go? Writer's Digest annual conference.
Oh, awesome.
Yep. So I'm back on the circuit. Feels good.
And I'm excited that I think the next time I get to see you is going to be in February 2023 in Colorado Springs at Superstars.
Awesome. I can't wait. That's going to be fun. That's going to be a lot of fun.
That's going to be a good time. So it is November 2022 as we're recording this, and it's a 10-year anniversary for you. about beginning the writer journey. And for any of my listeners who aren't familiar with you as a writer and your background, etc., can you talk about the significant life-changing moment 10 years ago that led
Yes.
to the writer dream?
Yes. So it was July of 2020 or 2020, 2012, I should say. I was on a nice dinner with my wife. We were out just kind of celebrating, just kind of relaxing. And we went to this fancy restaurant and had a great meal. And later that night, I got sick and I had no idea what it was. I thought it was food poisoning, but it was really bad. So it was to the point where I had to go to the hospital. And lo and behold, I did have food poisoning, but I had a pretty bad type. And to make matters worse, while I was at the hospital, I picked up an infection. There was a certain type of bacteria that lives in hospitals, and you can look it up. It's kind of a rampant problem, and I didn't know anything about it at the time. So I was in the hospital for a month, and I lost like 50 pounds. I looked like a skeleton, and I was on morphine for like a way too long. And it was an interesting experience for me, and I use interesting in the utmost sense of the word because I was working a dead end job in the insurance industry that I hated. I was a claims adjuster. People were yelling and screaming at me all day, and that wasn't much fun. I had these dreams that I wanted to be a writer, but I was writing short stories at the point and poetry, and nothing was happening, and no agents would take any interest in me, and I just kind of was floundering in that regard. And I remember being on the hospital bed, and I was on morphine, and I was staring at the wall, and I remember, what am I doing with my life? And I felt like I had kind of hit rock bottom. And I remember getting this beautiful vision of me being a writer. And I it was just the most beautiful thing. I saw myself in the future almost, being successful, having a published book or books to my name, and just being so happy. And I just remember that feeling of happiness. And I swore that, when I got better, I was gonna jump into being a writer, and wasn't gonna look back, and I'd bend the universe around me to do it. And fortunately, I got better. The week I got out of the hospital, an article came out in one of our major newspapers here, the USA Today, about this particular bacteria and how it was killing people all over the country, particularly young people. And I actually shared that on my YouTube channel for my audience. But yeah, it's been a long 10 years, but it's been a great 10 years. And like I said, I healed up. I got better. I'm fine now, thank goodness.
Yeah.
And I haven't looked back. And right around that time, I got out of the hospitals when I found the Creative Penn. I found the Alliance of Independent Authors, and I learned about self-publishing.
Wow. I mean, it was almost like the perfect time too, because you were probably writing short stories to try and get published in magazines to get a name for yourself so an agent would take interest.
Exactly.
Right?
That's
Exactly.
exactly the path I was on.
Yeah.
And it was going nowhere. And I'm in many respects, I'm glad that that experience happened to me.
Yeah.
I don't recommend that people go out and have a near-death experience to figure out what they want to do in life. That's not what I'm recommending, but I
Right.
was, it completely changed my life.
Right. And you took charge. So at that point in time, rather than I'm going to submit some things and hope that I'm going to get accepted one day or whatever and get through the slush piles, at that point in time, you're like, no, enough's enough. I take charge. You discovered the Creative Pen. You discovered ALLI. You discovered all of these things that you're like, wait a second, I can do this. And I don't need to wait for anyone's permission. So it's been 10 years since you doubled down and made that change as a writer. How many different, I mean, I know you write in more than one genre and you also do help for writers, but how many books do you have out there and in how many different genres?
I'm sitting at about 81, 82, I think last I checked, books.
Whoa.
Yeah, yeah. So I'm aiming for 100 by the end of next year. So
Wow, by the end of 2023, 100 books.
end of 23.
So let's talk about that. I mean, was this something where you just immediately quit that dead end job that you hated and you're like, no, I'm just going to start writing full time now, and that's how you had the time to write all those books? Or
Gosh, I
how did
wish
you
I could
squeeze
have
that
done
in?
that. I wish I could have done that, but I had crushing student loans that were like half my paycheck, so I had no choice but
Right.
to keep working. But I did find a better job, so that helped.
Oh, okay,
But
that too. Okay.
yeah, so I
So
found a better
writing
job,
and new job.
writing and new job, and at that point, I got married the next year.
Okay.
So married, starting a family. So I have been someone who has kind of built my career on having writing, but also working full time in the corporate world. And
Wow.
that is a heck of a struggle to be able to do. And
Yeah.
I've written my 82 books or so while working full time, raising a family, attending
What?
law school in the evenings,
You still attending law school, working full time,
full
not
time.
part time, and you managed to write 81, 82 books in a 10-year span. So
Yes.
so where do you where do you find the time? Where do you sacrifice the time? Do you sleep? What's going on?
Well, actually, I cut a hole in the time space continuum. The jig is up
Oh,
now.
oh man! Now finally, you've heard it here first, listener.
Exactly. That's the best way to save some time. But no, I have some secret weapons.
Okay.
The first one is I have an amazing spouse. She's very supportive of me, and she tolerates me being in a room by myself making stuff up for long periods of time.
Okay.
So that's helpful. And she's very supportive of my writing, and we've made some decisions in our marriage and just in our lives to kind of help me do that. And that has been very, very helpful for
Okay.
me. Another thing that's been helpful is we talked a little bit about this before we started recording, but I like to write on my phone.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, my lifestyle is pretty busy. I'm always on the go. I've got an 8-year-old daughter, so I'm the dad taxi service at this point. So, the time that I'm actually in front of my computer is actually very, very minimal every day.
Right.
So and I have a pretty busy job. So I actually discovered that if I'm going to continue writing at the pace that I want to write, I have to learn how to change something.
Okay.
So for the longest time, I used Scrivener iOS on the Mac.
Oh, and that's what you're using on your so on a desktop
on
or
my
on your.
on the Mac, and then I have the iPhone version.
Okay.
And so I
All right.
sync. So basically, I'll wake up at like 5:30 in the morning, and I'll start writing. And then when it's
Okay.
time for me to go to work, I'll sync my manuscript to my phone.
Okay.
So then when I'm on a break at work, or I'm at lunch, or I'm
Okay.
out running errands or something, and I'm standing in line at the grocery store waiting to check out, I can pull out my phone and pick up where I left off on my novel.
Okay.
A couple sentences here and there.
For commuting, do you drive in? Do you take a bus, a train? Because do you have that commuting time to write, or is it just the breaks and all the other moments?
Yeah, I work at home now, but for a
Oh,
long
okay.
time, I've only worked from home for the last 2 years. So
Right.
for 8 years, I did commute.
Okay.
And I listened to podcasts during my commute. I didn't do any kind of writing
Really?
during the commute. I live in a small city here in the States, Des Moines,
Okay.
Iowa. So, I'm 15 minutes from pretty much anything. So I don't
Okay.
spend a whole lot of time in the car, but now I do. I have figured out how to write while I'm driving, and I do that through dictation.
So wait, so you're using the Scrivener app on your phone, the iOS version of the Scrivener app. So you said in line at the grocery store, maybe waiting to pick
Yep.
your daughter up somewhere. You've got 15 minutes or 10 minutes. You just kind of keep going away. And now you're also dictating. Are there any syncing challenges with dictating, or any sort of shortcuts that you take to get everything synced back into the main manuscript?
Yeah, that's a challenge. So I don't use Scrivener for dictation. I actually have a voice recorder. So
Okay.
I can't really see it that well on
Yeah.
the camera, but I actually have this. It's a voice recorder, and I have a harmonica neck holder, and I slip it into the harmonica neck holder, and I put it over.
Oh my
I can't do
God.
it. I put it over my
No,
neck.
no. I see. Yeah. And now I recognize that shape. Yeah, that's the
So I kind of
harmonica.
look like Darth Vader, So this morning I was doing dishes, and I was dictating part of my book, and so then I
Wow.
just hook it up to my computer, have Dragon transcribe it, and then I
Okay.
throw it right into my manuscript. So the hardest part is just the mental part of, okay, where did I leave off? Where am I going?
Right.
But you get used to that pretty quick when you have to do it. Necessity is the mother of all invention, right? So
Yeah.
when I'm walking my dog, I have a little lapel mic that I hook up to my voice recorder,
Okay.
and I slip it in my pocket, and I dictate, and I take my dog on a lot of walks. So, that's a lot of writing time that I get just by virtue of doing finding a way to cram writing into something that I was already doing
Right.
when I probably would have just been listening to a podcast or listening to music anyway.
And then the dog's probably so happy to be out and about while you're happy to be getting more writing done.
Yeah, my dog is definitely the biggest winner of my dictation efforts because I've increased the length of the walks too.
Right.
So every once in a while, she doesn't she goes crazy when she sees other dogs. So I
Yeah.
have to kind of stop my recording to
Oh,
corral her a little bit. But
I
no,
understand
it
that.
works out pretty well.
Yeah, yeah. No, and that's a certain point when you're under deadline, you're trying to get a manuscript done. Just like, come on, we already walked 6 times today. What's going on?
Yeah, exactly. And then, there are times where I walk around my neighborhood and I do think some of my neighbors think I'm probably crazy,
Right.
because I'm
Yeah.
talking to myself.
Yes,
It's like,
exactly.
what is this guy doing? And it's like, it's okay. I have had one neighbor stop me and ask me, what are you doing? And I'm like, well, I'm actually writing a novel. And they're just like fascinated.
Like, really? But it looks like
Really?
you're just talking to yourself.
Yeah, I thought maybe you were on a phone or something. But no, I'm just writing a novel.
Oh, that's fantastic. I found I got the AirShocks, the bone conductor
Oh, cool.
headphones, which are really, really great for picking up your voice for speaking, because you can still hear ambient, so you can hear traffic, which is great when I'm driving. I just push a button to answer the phone. But I haven't yet mastered a dictation. What were some of the tricks? Like, do you outline in advance? I mean, how do you keep place when you're
Yeah,
dictating?
I make everything up as I go.
Okay.
And I'm what you would call a pantser, or
Okay.
more professionally a discovery writer.
Right.
So I'm a big believer in Dean Wesley Smith's method of writing into the dark. That
Okay.
if you don't know what's going to happen, then your readers aren't going to know. So from the moment I start talking and speaking a story, I have no idea what's going to happen.
Really?
And when I'm on a walk with my dog, I'm usually surprising myself. Like, oh, whoa, I didn't know this was going to happen. This is interesting. So then I want to go back on another walk with my dog to figure out what happens next in the story. And so I think that makes for more engaging writing too.
Wow.
But
Um,
it's definitely a learning curve.
yeah, yeah, I can imagine it probably started off slow and then you worked your way into it.
Yeah, I
Is
started off as an outliner, and
Yeah.
I outlined my novels religiously. And I was finding that when I would outline my books, I wouldn't stick to the outline. Like I would deviate from it. And
Right.
I actually, I have a bit of an intense personality. So I actually timed exactly how long it took me to write a novel, and exactly how many times I deviated from the outline. And I found that I was deviating like 50% of the time. So it's
Right.
like, well, if I'm doing all this deviation, why am I wasting my time with this? So I
Yes.
just started, telling the story from the seat of my pants. And the first one was the toughest. That's
Yeah.
the hardest one. But then once you get used to it, then it gets a lot easier.
Wow. I have to ask this. Are there certain, because you do both writing, right? Like on the device as well as of dictate. Are there certain scenes that just flow better when you're dictating versus when you're I imagine you're thumb typing, or how are you doing how are you doing that?
Yeah, there's like a action scenes always flow better off of the tongue
Okay.
when I'm dictating, I find. And then sometimes the more heavy character, when you're doing a lot of heavy character work or heavy
Okay.
setting work, sometimes that works better coming from your fingers because you can take a little bit more time to think about it. But
Right.
I've done both ways. Once you learn how to do it, a bit of your brain kind of breaks,
Right.
especially like when you dictate. Like it just becomes second nature.
Oh, I love that. Now, you have a writer's manifesto that still lives on your website, and I remember seeing it, and I saw it again recently, and I went, "Oh yeah, that's such a cool." Could you share the
I would
writer's
love to.
manifesto with my listeners?
Yeah, I have a manifesto that I lay this out as a promise to my readers of what they can expect from me, and what they can expect to get in my books. And so part one of that, and maybe we can take it by part if you want, Mark.
Sure.
Part one is I believe that it's up to each and every one of us to be the best possible versions of ourselves. And I believe that's true of myself. I'm certainly a work in progress, but I think everyone's doing the best they can.
Right.
And I think that's true of characters as well. And I think when we read stories, we're reading characters who are trying to become the best possible versions of themselves, whether they realize it consciously or unconsciously.
So I love this because this isn't just about being a writer. This is about being a person.
Yeah.
Right. So it's applicable to anyone. Okay. I love that. Love that.
All right. Number 2 is I believe that it's okay to be different and that no one can take away what makes you unique.
Beautiful.
So very
Okay.
important to me. I
Again,
think, yeah.
it's universal.
Again, it's universal. It has nothing to do necessarily with being a writer, being a reader. It's just more of a human thing. And I think the world would be a better place if everybody embraced what made them unique. I think we spend a lot of time trying to mold ourselves into what other people think about us or what other
Right.
people think we should be, and that just creates so much unhappiness in the world. And especially as writers, we feel like we have to write certain things,
Yeah.
whereas I think you should be free to write what you want because that's ultimately how you build a career.
Beautiful. Oh my God. You're speaking to my heart here. Okay.
All right.
We
All
got
right.
what's the next one?
The next one is I believe that stories make us better people because they expand our minds and show us life through someone else's eyes. And being a writer, I mean, being a reader is really about seeking empathy.
Yeah.
You pick up books and they're from characters and authors you've never heard of, and you learn so much from someone else's perspective, and being a writer really is an exercise in empathy as well. And I
I
think
love
that's
that.
important.
No, I love that. I remember reading a study in the last couple of years that did demonstrate that those who read more tended to have more empathetic tendencies. So, yeah, why wouldn't the same be true for those who write?
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah.
And then the next one is I believe that stories change lives. They've changed mine in immeasurable ways.
Oh, fantastic. That
Yeah.
is amazing.
And the last one is I believe that human nature is inherently good and that most people are just doing the best they can. So
Again, these are, I mean, yes, they're very they're sort of angled towards writer and reader in general, the beautiful world that the dance that you play all the time. But what a beautiful manifesto for living, I think.
yeah, and that's what you can typically expect in my characters. Um,
Wow.
I have a series. It's called The Good Necromancer. It's one of my more popular series, and it's about a necromancer who uses his powers for good. So you think about necromancy, and
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
such an evil art. You think necromancer, and you think, oh, that's a heavy,
yeah.
evil character. And he used to be that way, but he's decided to use his powers to help humanity and to help people solve the problems that they have every day. And that means he has to do some pretty dark stuff. But at the end of the day, he's a good guy.
Oh,
So
awesome. So how long is that series? And like for readers, are they still coming out?
yes, the series is current. I'm still publishing currently.
Yeah.
I've got 6 books in the series right now, so
Awesome.
I'm up
That's
to
the
6
good
books, and
necromancer.
yeah, the Good Necromancer. So
Awesome.
yeah, it kind of draws on my personal experience. It takes place in the city I grew up in, and
Okay.
yeah, it's a lot of fun.
That's kind of cool. Do you write, since you have so many different books out, do you write all under the same pseudonym or under the same name?
I do now. I
Okay.
used to not do that. So when I started this Good Necromancer series, I actually started under a pen name because it's an urban fantasy series. And
Okay.
I thought, well, if I start under a new pen name, it's kind of like starting fresh, but that
Yeah.
didn't really work out so well. So
Okay.
now I have my fiction under Michael La Ronn, and then I have books for writers under M.L. Ron, just to keep a little bit of separation.
Yeah, I do a similar thing where you know it's me. It's
Mhm.
very different. So let's talk a little bit about your books for writers. So you do stuff for ALLI. So you discovered them, they helped you, and then obviously you decided to step in and participate and give to the writing community in that way.
Yeah, I am Ally's outreach manager. So I'm kind of in charge of getting Ally's name out into the world,
Right.
spreading their message, bringing in new people, new organizations that do wonderful things for authors. And I also host one of their podcasts. So I actually wrote a book for Ally 2 years ago. And it's called 150 Self-Publishing Questions Answered. And it just kind of takes the most burning self-publishing questions that we get on the show that I host. It's the member Q&A podcast, and
Yeah.
we just kind of turn those into a book. So I'm just a big believer in give it back.
Yeah.
I've had really good mentors, and anything that I can do to kind of pass those positive vibes forward is just really important to me.
Oh, that's fantastic. So this boggles my mind considering the volume of work you've produced, working full time somewhere in your spare time, you're getting your law degree, and and then you're also helping writers. Because how many books do you actually have for writers? Because I think I want to talk about the most recent one as well.
Yeah, I'm over 20, I think, at this point. Last I checked.
Okay.
If I'm not, I am, because I have some that I haven't published yet. So, so I've got like 4 that I'm waiting to publish at this point. So,
Wow.
yeah, so I'm over 20.
So one of the most recent ones, and maybe you've already released another one since then, but I remember listening to you on the Creative Penn podcast not that long ago, or maybe it was many months ago, because time's weird lately. And that was about estate planning for writers, or specifically about that sort of thinking about your heirs.
Yes, I actually did 2 books. One is called the Author Estate Handbook,
Okay.
and the other one is a follow-up to that, but it's written for people that are going to take over authors' estates, and that's called the Author Heir Handbook. And
Oh, so they're companion pieces then.
they're companion pieces.
Okay.
Yeah, this estate planning thing has been something I've thought about for a long time.
Yeah.
There's no easy answers to it. There's a lot of planning, but essentially I tried to answer the question for myself of what will happen to my books when I die.
Yeah.
And it's not an easy thing to confront. You got to confront
Yeah.
your own mortality and think about what's going to happen when you're gone. But I think it's essential, because we spend a lot of time building equity in our books. Every book you publish is equity. Really, it's adding value to your intellectual property portfolio, and it would be a shame that if you passed away, it just all goes away and your family can no longer continue earning the benefits that you've worked so hard to
Right.
accrue. So I tried to answer those questions for myself, and I tried to write the most comprehensive book that I could that answered a lot of the questions that I had about what happens to my books when I die, what happens to my bank accounts when I die, what do I do with taxes, what should be in my will. And I wrote one book for authors that's super in-depth and nitty-gritty, and then I wrote another book for heirs, because those are the people that are going to be taking over our author careers and our
Right.
books, and they probably have no idea what we do every day.
Yeah.
Right. So I thought it would be kind of a cool idea to try to write a book in plain English for heirs as
Right.
well.
And it starts off, it's just all we do is sit in front of a typewriter with a glass of scotch, right? And dream. That's what we do, right?
That's exactly it. Yeah, the glass of scotch, and it just goes downhill from there, right?
Yeah, pretty much. So, are you considering how prolific you are with your writing and all of the different things that you're juggling in the writing? Is the day job still something that brings you passion and joy?
Yeah, I actually love my day job.
Yeah.
During the day, I'm an executive at a global insurance company, and I like it a lot. I have
Yeah.
a really good group of people that I work with, and
Right.
I have found that being happy and content in my job has actually helped my writing quite a bit, and they
Really?
feed off of each other.
Okay.
Yeah, they really do, and they create this kind of, people talk about work-life balance. I actually don't believe in work-life balance. I believe in work-life harmony, because your life is not two, because that assumes that there's 2 things to your life, right? Because when I think of balance, I think of like a seesaw. You
Right.
can only have 2 things on a seesaw, and at one point, if one thing is going to always be heavier than the other. But really, your life is multifaceted. There are many things that you have in your life, many responsibilities. I'm a writer, but I'm also a dad. I'm a son. I'm a husband. I'm a pet dad. And I have volunteer opportunities. Things that I do. So
Yeah.
I'm a multitude of different things, and so I've always taken the approach of all the things that I'm responsible for, are they all harmonizing together? And is the result a nice song? And if the answer is yes, then I keep doing it. If the answer is no, there's dissonance somewhere. And I think I owe it to figure out how to solve that dissonance. And that's how I've always thought about work-life balance. So to answer your question on, does the job find enjoyment or contentment? I've learned a lot of skills on my job that I've applied to being a writer.
Wow, I love that. I'm gonna ask you a question that may frustrate somebody as prolific as you, because I know it's something that hits me. It's like, so what's next? Because when we talked about your writing books, there's 4 books that are in the queue, and
Yeah.
then you're trying to decide which one's next. So in terms of stuff for writers, what's new? But then I want to say, in terms of your fiction, your creative fiction work, what's new, or what are you most excited about that's coming out soon?
Yeah, that's a great question. I'm very much interested in AI art for
Okay.
authors. I think that this is a watershed year for that. So I'm keeping a very close eye on that and learning how to do my own covers and learning a little bit about on the design side. That excites me to no end. So for
Right.
authors, I've been talking a lot about that. So that's, I think, next. I'm also going to be writing 1,000,000 words next year. So I'm going to be documenting that.
Wow.
I'm a glutton for punishment. I'm going to try to do 1,000,000 words next year and the Ray Bradbury challenge.
Which is a
So
story a week, right?
story a week, story a
Uh,
week. And I my year actually started in September, so I'm actually like 10, 11 stories in. So I'm making pretty good progress on the Bradbury side, but
wow.
I got to
Okay.
keep myself entertained, and I like to do challenges. So on the writing side, that's kind of
Okay.
what's coming next. On the fiction side, I've been writing a lot of short stories, like I said. So
Right.
I'm trying to get a lot of stuff out to magazines, and I'm
Okay.
going to continue my Good Necromancer series,
Okay.
and that'll be a big focus next year. And then I'm also going to be figuring out what the next urban fantasy series I'm going to write will be.
A new
So
series. Okay.
a new series. So I'll probably involve my readers in that. I usually like to have them vote on concepts that they like. So
Okay.
that way, I can give them it's kind of a shell game, because it's like, okay, here are two concepts that I am like super passionate about. And whatever they pick, I win. But
Yeah.
it's just a matter it's just a matter of what they want to read. So
Oh, okay,
um
that's cool. How
uh,
how is that author community then for you, in terms of, is it mostly through newsletter? Is it via video, audio? I know people can sort of um bring you into their lives in so many different ways. How
yeah,
do
I have a
you
YouTube
stay in
channel.
contact?
Yeah, I have a YouTube channel that I've got over 40,000 subscribers at this point. I have a wonderful community of people that follow me. I've also got a newsletter, and I also have a blog nightly that I post how my day went. So I talk about everything that I'm doing on a daily basis to kind of achieve my goals as an author.
Okay.
And a lot of people like that because they can kind of get a window into what it looks like to be a working writer.
Cool. And you said you're going to be documenting this 1,000,000 words in 365 days. Is that on YouTube and your blog as well? Is that where?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep, you can follow me at authorlevelup.com/blog. Every night I post, and I actually have a running tally of my metrics at the end of each day. So
Wow.
I got a handy Word, or not Word, but Excel spreadsheet that I use that calculates everything, and I just copy and paste that at the bottom. So that way it holds me accountable. So you can see if
Right.
I failed, you can see how close I am to the goal. And yeah, if I succeed, I'll succeed publicly. If I fail, I'll fail publicly. And I think it's just fun. You know,
Wow.
um, yeah, I enjoy challenging myself. I think that's critical to kind of stay motivated.
So for anyone who's listening to you and saying, "Oh, I'm interested in checking out his fiction. I want to see what his writing's all about," where do you recommend a reader, fiction reader, begin within the Michael La Ronn, universes?
Yeah, I would recommend starting with my Good Necromancer
Yeah.
series
Okay.
if you're into to fantasy. We talked about that. I've got science fiction as well. The series that a lot of people start with is my Android X series, and that's
Okay.
a series that takes place in the year 2300. It's about an android special agent trying to hunt down a killer. So
Oh, cool. Awesome. Okay, cool. Excellent. Thank you. Now I want to take you back, since 2022 is 10 years since you were laying in the bed, wasting away, and making a promise. What would you say if you were to appear before Michael in 2012? What would you say to that Michael?
that's a really insightful question, Mark. I would probably say, don't sweat the little stuff. Lean into um, lean into what comes your way. I would also, I'm a big long term thinker. I've always been that way, but I would have told myself to think even bigger long term.
Okay.
So when I make plans and strategies, I'm not thinking about the month or the year. I'm thinking about 10 years ahead.
Okay.
And I think that I could have done a better job of that early in my career, just in terms of the types of books that I picked. Um, I used to do book covers and they would all look different. And so what I've had to go back and do is rebrand everything. And so I would have told myself, if you want to save some money, think about this ahead of time. What your books are going to look like, and what the branding impression is going to be when a reader comes across you for the first time. All of that is really critical. And so I would have told myself that. But there's a lot of things that I wouldn't change. Honestly,
Okay.
I'm grateful for the mistakes that I've made because they've taught me a lot.
Excellent. And speaking of branding, now you have branding as a fiction author, but also branding as a trusted industry, insightful insider, sharer, etc. There seems to be no difference, right? It's a consistent brand, or am I missing out on some of the differences between the Michael, a fiction writer, and ML? Although
Yeah,
we know him as Michael,
yeah,
who
they're
helps
they're
authors.
pretty much the same.
Okay.
It's kind of an open secret. I share links to my fiction in the back of my nonfiction, and vice versa. So anyone, if they wanna hunt me down, they can find me pretty easily.
Yeah, it's pretty much easy. And speaking of where they can find you, where can people find out more about you?
Yeah, you can find more about me at my fiction at michaellaronn.com, and my nonfiction and books for writers and my YouTube channel at authorlevelup.com.
Awesome. Michael, thank you so much for hanging out with me today and sharing some fun stories and insights and a manifesto for living.
Yeah, thank you, Mark. It's been my pleasure.
There's so many things to reflect on from this conversation with Michael. The first one is just considering the fact that he loves his day job. And I think that's an important message for writers. There's this belief in the indie author community that we all want to work full-time as writers and live that dream. But what if you love your day job? I mean, I love the work I do with Drafted Digital. Fortunately, I'm very, very lucky. I was able to negotiate 20 hours a week as part-time. But I love what I do. I absolutely adore it. And so the weeks where I do put in 40 plus hours, it's not so bad because I love what I do. I love interacting with writers. So I agree with Michael's perspective of just really enjoying the job that he has and loving it. And it doesn't take away from his success as a writer because, I mean, he still does that regardless of how successful the writing aspect of his life has been. And I guess related to that is how he ends up fitting in the writing and prioritizing it by being able to, using the technology and syncing Scrivener up so he can write for those 2 to 3 to 5 minutes because every single word he gets done gets him that much closer to his goal. I sent out a newsletter on the 30th of November, my Stark Reflections newsletter, which I have to admit I haven't been all that good at sending out on a regular basis. And I was reflecting on how I only got 36,000 words done for NaNoWriMo. And instead of beating myself up over that, I think about the fact that I failed NaNoWriMo numerous times, but I didn't fail as a writer because every word I wrote during that month is a word closer to the goal. That's exactly what Michael's doing with, writing for those 3 minutes or those 5 minutes on his phone. And that's how he gets so much done. And the last thing I wanted to reflect on is sort of related to when he talked about balance. And I loved his perspective on that. It's more than a seesaw. It's more than just a work-life balance. Because we are all complex people. We have multitudes in our own lives and who we are and the roles we play. And all of the things that are important to us. It's not just our family and it's not just our writing and it's not just the job we love. It's not just our neighbors and the community and all of the things that make up who we are. It's multiple responsibilities. It's a multitude. And so finding more than just balance, but finding contentment within those pieces of our world and making the best of all of them provides, this goes back, I guess, to his, writer's manifesto or a manifesto for living. And it's just such a positive thing. I remember the day I interviewed Michael, finishing the conversation, go, my God, I miss talking to that guy. It's been so long. I just miss listening to him. And then just editing this earlier today, just feeling uplifted and powerful in my own way from listening to him. And I hope, dear listener, that you found listening to Michael and that conversation uplifting, motivating, and powerful. I hope you found something useful in this episode, as I did when I was chatting with Michael. Well, that's it for this episode. That's it for my post-interview reflection. I will be back next week, hopefully with more of a voice. Maybe my voice comes back. Who knows? We'll see. But I will be here, as I have been for the past 5 years, every single Friday, dear listener. Thank you for being here, dear listener. And so until next week and next episode, this is Mark Leslie Lefebvre wishing you great writing and good Stark Reflections.
Thank you for listening to the Stark Reflections podcast. You can find show notes for each episode at starkreflections.ca.
The music for this podcast, Laser Groove, was composed and produced by Kevin MacLeod. Check out more of Kevin's great music at incomptech.com.